much for sharing all these stories and this information with us. If I understand correctly, not everyone will die from the things you have described. So I suppose there is a lot of disabilities that have been caused as well by the use of different weapons. And I would like to hear a bit more about disabilities in relation, if you have information as well. And I am also a bit curious to hear if there are specific health services or if there is a specific area, maybe from the Ministry of Health or from the Ministry of Human Rights, that is looking at these particular situations, including cancer, including child mortality. Because my understanding was that WHO for Iraq, I met some of them a year ago in Amman, was quite interested about these issues. So perhaps I have the wrong impression that they were devoting specific resources, maybe some people, to look at these incidents and these issues. And this is a question for both of you.
Well, the World Health Organization has persistently stated on the basis of entirely on the basis of a desktop assessment of the effects of the amount of uranium which has been used, that it is impossible for that amount of uranium to cause any health effects whatever. So that's an official statement from the World Health Organization. As far as the World Health Organization investigating any issue with regard to radiation effects, they have an agreement with the International Atomic Energy Agency, which was signed in 1959, which stops them from looking at any sort of effects of radioactivity or radiation. They have to leave that to the International Atomic Energy Agency. And the IAEA, their remit is the peaceful development of nuclear energy. And so there's a very serious conflict of interest there. But the reason we know that this deal is still in force, I mean it is in force, but that it's being used, is when we investigate the health effects of the Chernobyl accident. And the health effects of the Chernobyl accident are increasingly seen to be extremely serious. I mean, if you like to say, you can compare Fallujah with parts of Belarus, like Gomel. And exactly the same thing happened. Huge increases in congenital malformation, enormous increases in childhood cancer and in adult cancer, breast cancer, all of these things. But none of these things have been placed at the door of any sort of radiation from Chernobyl. And the reason is that the World Health Organization has done nothing, and that the whole of the issue is being examined, or has been examined, by the International Atomic Energy Agency. And their position is that because the amounts of radiation involved, in terms of dose, are too low to cause these effects, the effects cannot exist, or if they do exist, they must be due to radiophobia or drinking too much vodka or a whole range of quite unpersuasive explanations. And that is the situation with the WHO. So I do not believe that the WHO will do anything serious to investigate these effects, but I hope that they change their mind, and I hope that they are doing something, and all of these hopes are out there. But so far I've seen absolutely no sign of it. And as far as Fallujah is concerned, the only thing I heard was that about 3 days after I went on Al Jazeera to talk about preliminary, to do the first presentation of what we found, 3 days after that the World Health Organization is supposed to have said that they're going to look into the issue. And so far I've heard nothing more. There's been no looking into it, and there's been no studies, and nothing. But of course I don't know what they do. Maybe they are looking into it. Who knows? That's the position with the WHO. I think that was no, yes, it was a question of casualties. All right.
Disability.
Well, sorry? Disabilities.
What
yeah.
we in human rights we call disability.
Yeah, well, I don't know what the human rights. Disabilities, I assume you mean things like your legs being blown off, or you've only got one arm or something like that.
Yeah, but it can also be mental disabilities. It can be
radiation. Well, there will be a
mental.
lot of those because these radiation genetic effects cause mental disabilities. No question about that. And that's also been found in the areas of Chernobyl that were affected by similar sorts of exposures. So there will be a lot of those. But the main problem, I have to say, is invisible. It's genetic damage to the population, and this will continue for a very long time. So it's not just this. It's not just the adults. It's the children, and it's not just the children. It will be their children, and it will be their children, and so on. Because the effects that we have been examining in the affected areas of the Chernobyl accident, certainly in animals, have been shown to continue for at least 22 generations in animal studies. 22 but that doesn't mean it's going to stop there. It just means that that's the number of generations that they got to in their study.
But uranium, half-life of uranium is...
Well, the half-life of uranium is very long, but my belief is that the exposures from uranium will not continue, that rainfall and general kind of weathering and so on will eventually, the uranium will become dispersed sufficiently. So it's not the uranium that's the problem now, it's the fact that the genetic damage is already done, and you can't clean up genetic damage. Yeah, so that is the problem. So if you're talking about what's needed there are facilities for people who are mentally affected, and you need facilities for cancer treatment and
I have just one
Drugs.
yes, that's right. All of that
It's a
stuff,
big
yeah.
issue.
As far as cleaning up the environment, it is possible that it might be worth looking at phytoremediation, putting growing plants which absorb uranium and then taking the plants away. But that is a quite a tricky area, because plants are quite clever, and over the evolutionary timescales, plants have learned not to absorb uranium. So although you can find plants that will absorb cadmium and mercury and just about everything else, there are technical reasons why plants have got quite scared of uranium and exclude it, and human beings too, incidentally. So if you drink uranium, it will just go through you, it won't go inside you, because your gut has developed a resistance to uranium. But the problem is that your lungs haven't developed a resistance to inhaling uranium, because it's never had to do that.
Sorry, with regard to the WHO, I just got this text message now. We have one of our group, Malak Hamdan, the co-author of this study. She knew that there will be a meeting in Istanbul by the WHO and the Iraqi Ministry of Health with regard to discuss this issue, or to start looking at this issue. So she contacted them, and she insists to be part of this, or to attend. And now they say to her that you are welcome to participate. So she is going to participate, but on her expenses, of course. Not
I wanted to be the picture more clear. The government since a long time, from the first battle, they don't do anything yearly to have the Fallujah for the political reason. American, after the second battle, Mr. Ashraf Kazi, we show him some reportage of British channel. They asked Dr. M.Abidallah, the president of the WHO, and also Eliot Tamburi to write 2 letters to American to enter 2 delegation. Human rights WHO. American refused until the long time before they take the troop out. The security reason there is no anyone can enter. Iraqi government, until now there is political control of them. This political not control for us only. We have a big problem inside the government. Call it governmental terrorist. Governmental terrorist is mean if you work something not as the government want, they can to prepare for you any fake crime or something, or under torturing as this many people cases to put you in the jail or to destroy you. This is the reason most of the NGOs start to be far away from anything recording the violation crimes. Another problem, the medical report of UNAMI, controlled now also by Iraq government. They should look for it. Any program, also project to help the NGOs about violation recording, should Iraq government agreed about it. And our friend now Ismail with the Italian organization, they want, they have project about new network or project about protect the defenders of human rights. UNDP said without the Iraqi government permission, we cannot do anything. Sorry.
Okay, may I'm really very sorry for that, but we booked this room for 1 hour, and Wade and we have another meeting with another publication. Also, so that's a apologize for that. Do you have any other thing to raise?
What about the copy from all this evidence to be confirmed for this report?
We can, if you want to.
Question to Professor Chris, maybe on whether there are other studies from Iraq on similar cases
There was,
from
there was a
Basra.
leukemia study in Basra this year, I think, from some Americans. I forget the name of that, but anyway, if you type in leukemia Basra on the internet, you'll find that study. I think it found a 3- or 4-fold excess of leukemia in Basra over some period. I think it was quite a period quite far back.
What about Kurdistan?
About where?
Kurdistan, you mentioned Kurdistan.
Oh yes, no. But you're talking about peer-reviewed studies. I mean, I've seen studies of, but this is the Kurdistan study was long ago. This was to do with poison gas used they used mustard gas in Kurdistan. I don't think anybody has done an official study in a peer-reviewed literature on that. This is just like reportage, you know. But I have to say that this whole business of peer review is also a very grey area. You know, when I worked in the Policy Information Network for Child Health and Environment in the EU, we had about 40 senior epidemiologists and medical doctors and paediatricians and researchers from the universities all over Europe. And we came to the conclusion that you have to be very careful when you say that only something in a peer review literature is what you should listen to, because very often what's in the peer review literature is rubbish or biased, and very often what isn't in the peer review literature is accurate but doesn't get into the peer review literature because the journals won't let this stuff in. So we decided and we recommended to the European Union that legislators and politicians who were concerned about the effects of environmental pollution should actually look at all of the evidence, and it doesn't matter whether it's in the peer review or the grey literature or even in newspapers, because as human beings we should listen to all of the evidence, and the idea that the truth is only to be found in scientific peer review literature is nonsense, because all of the major advances that have occurred in science have always occurred outside the peer review literature. And if you think about it, that's exactly what would happen. Because if you have an idea of what's going on and you're a professor of that particular area and you're wrong because some new guy comes along and finds some new thing, then you're going to reject it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. احنا جي حنكون عندنا ومع ويدا maybe I don't know if the special rapporteur on health.
She was informed that she has
No.
a commitment.
But excuse me, can you not demand? Do you not have some power here, some position as in your position with the Human Rights Commission, where you can write to the WHO and demand that they investigate, or that they set up an independent committee to investigate this sort of thing? Do you have no power to do that?
We don't have the power as the Office of the Commission for Rights. Of course, we don't have this power unless something may come from the Human Rights Council. It's not possible for the office. However, we have a coordination mechanism with the WHO, and we can ask for that. Ask meaning not request, but we can discuss that.
You see, I was talking to the Red Cross lady at the ICRC yesterday, and they were saying, oh, we can't do anything because we have to remain neutral and so on. And I said to her, look, what if I came to you with evidence that Hitler was gassing the Jews in Auschwitz, you know? What would you do? Would you say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do anything because I'd have to talk to Mr. Hitler and get his side of the problem and all this sort of stuff? You know, it is a bit of a problem if nobody can do anything. You can just have anything happening in the world and it just continues to happen. And I have to say that does seem to be the case.
No, we have a lot of
Probably on
mechanisms. No, we have many mechanisms. For example, the special rapporteur on the right to health can do that work.
There are two procedures that can take action on this issue. The special rapporteur on the movement and dumping of toxic and dangerous products and wastes, along with the special rapporteur on the right to health.
Well, how do we get to this?
my question was exactly the one Fresh asked, whether you brought this report to the attention of the authorities, because they can certainly send, it is called a letter of allocation.
Yeah, okay, well, how do we do that? That's what we want to do.
I'm
Letter
here.
is-
I'm gonna do it.
You're gonna do it,
But
okay.
Taking good care of.
the problem is,
That's why I asked
And also for
I was
information. We can formally say, we cannot ask them, but we can say.
And please take